So you'll notice at the top of this notebook, it says this is a mini lesson, do not write. I don't want you to write yet. You'll have a notebook entry at the end, but I just want to talk to you about when we take two decimals and compare. It's a little bit different than when we use whole numbers. For example, if I said 52 and 5,200, it would be very easy for you to pick which one's larger. You would know this number is larger. Easy, easy. And even when you were little, they told you that the alligator ate the biggest number. Okay? But these signs mean greater than, less than, and it can be equal to. Okay? And sometimes I know that we kind of mix up those signs, but these are going to be our choices. But what I wanted to talk to you about today were decimals. Decimals are not so easy. For example, this is 5 2/10, and this is 5 20/100. You might be tempted to say that this number is bigger than this one. However, don't be confused. Think about it. 5 2/10. 2/10. My teacher told me that was a dime. And if I had 2 dimes, that would be 20 cents, correct? Over here we have 20 hundredths. Well, my teacher said hundredths are pennies. And if I had 20 pennies, then that would be 20 cents. Wait a minute. These are the same amount. They're equal. See how decimals can get confusing? So when we compare numbers with decimals, we have to do it a little differently. And so now we're going to put in our notebooks some tips to rounding with those decimals and comparing numbers with decimals, deciding which one's bigger. We have a little procedure we need to do, okay? So, first of all, at the top of your paper, when I compare, that's what we're talking about today. When I compare decimals. All right, the first thing you're going to do, and I'm going to put number 1. The first thing is line up your decimals. This is so important. Decimals will make your brain get so confused, and it's important that you have all those decimals lined up when you're working with decimals. We're going to line the decimal up when we compare. We're going to line the decimal up when we add. We're going to line the decimal up when we subtract. So those decimals are a little tricky, but if we follow these steps, we will get it right every time. The second thing that I like my students to do, and I think you'll like it too, is we are going to fill in missing spaces with, I call them magic zeros. These are zeros that we can add to the number, and it doesn't change the value, but it helps us to compare. So, you know, I got to make it look a little bit magical since I use the word magic, right? Okay. Now, let me show you what I mean. Let's pretend on a test, you have a test that looks like this. All it says is compare, and then it has your choices greater than, less than, or equal to. And then they give you some unusual numbers, and I'm going to write them down for you, okay? I'm going to pull this up a little bit so you can see the bottom. Maybe they do 2, maybe I'm going to split it down the middle. Okay. And I'm going to put a circle in the middle for our sign. I want you to do that too. All right, be sure you're writing all this down. All right. Hopefully that gave you some time. I went a little slow so that you could get it all in there, and I hope that you did. Okay, I hope you got all that in there. All right, let's take a look. So right here, we have 205 and 1/10, 2 and 51 hundredths. And we have to decide which value is greater. So for just a moment, I'm going to show you how to compare. So the first number was 205 and 1/10. The other number was 2 and 51 hundredths. But I want to line up my decimal, and this is going to look a little odd. 2, okay? Now, we're going to really look at this. We're going to look at the rich side of town, the whole numbers, and if we can't determine how big it is from that side, we're going to have to study this side closely. Okay, so let's take a look. Well, on the rich side of town, we have 205 whole dollars and only 2 over here. Which one's bigger? The 205. That was easy because we have 205. That is the greater of the 2. Let's examine this next one. 5 and 13 hundredths, 51 and 3/10. If you're not careful, these numbers look almost exactly the same, but their decimal placement is different. Let's take a closer look. All right, we're going to go here and we're going to do 5 and 13 hundredths. See, I'm placing my decimal right underneath because we're going to line it up. We're going to line up those decimals. The other number was 51 and 3/10. Let's take a look. This is 51. That is much larger than 5. I don't even need to look over here because I can see that there are 51 holes, and that is much bigger than 5. So I'm going to go back to your notes where you are, and we are going to make 51 the larger of the 2. Now, this one is also tricky. Let's take a look. I'm going to get a new sheet of paper for that one. I've asked you to compare 75 thousandths to 7/10. All right, we look over here at the whole numbers, and there are none. So we are going to have to see who has more on this side of the decimal. Now, I know that some of you right now are thinking, well, that's easy. 75 is bigger than 7. But you would be very wrong. Okay? That's not how it works, remember? On the poor side of town. This 7 is worth a dime. This place value is worth a dime. And if there are 7, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This 7 right here is worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 cents. That's 70 out of a 100. Wow, that's almost $1. It's not very far away. So this is 70 cents. But look at this. This 7 is only worth pennies. This 7 is only worth 7 little pennies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And remember, this place is so tiny, in the words of our classmate Deshawn, it's absolutely worthless. That's what he says. So what we do to make sure we do not make this error is this. When we compare decimals, these two spaces are empty. If we would fill them in with zeros, then we will not be fooled and we will not be tricked. Now compare. Isn't 700 more than 75? And that's how I like to figure this out, because decimals can be confusing. So if we go back to our notes where you have written this down, 7 will be our larger number, okay? Because it's 7/10. And really, we added those zeros in. We added those zeros in so we could compare easily. All right, I'm going to come over here to our next number. And on the next thing, I asked you to compare these two numbers. Again, I'm trying to trick you. If you didn't line up the decimal, you might choose that 94 is bigger than 13, but you would get that wrong. That's not how it works. So let's follow the steps that we wrote here. Step 1, line up your decimals. Okay, I will. Decimal 1, decimal 2, they are in a straight line. This has 13, then a 0, a 9, and a 4. All right, this number only has 2 numbers behind the decimal, and this one has 3. So what we're going to do is add magic zeros so that we have the same number of digits behind the decimal. So I'm going to add that magic 0. It does not change the value behind the decimal. Now it is really easy to compare. Now let's look closely. Which is bigger, 130 or 94? That's right, this one. It's very important that you line them up, because if you're just going super fast, you would have said, "Ooh, this one's bigger." But you would have been wrong. Decimals follow special rules, and you need to really take the time to line up the decimal and make sure that you fill in with zeros so that these numbers will have the same number of digits so our eyes can easily see which one has the greater value. Decimals can be tricky. So we've done 4. There are 2 more in your notes. I want you to line up the decimal, compare your numbers, and tell me which one is larger and which one is smaller by using our greater than, less than, and equal signs. Do that now, and when we have our math meeting, I will check your answers.